guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Emma and I've been a nerd with my books all year. A total nerd. I've kept so many stats and statistics on the books I've read this year, and although this video might not interest everyone, I always find them interesting when booktubers do them. So I'm gonna do mine and say that it's for me, but if you're interested or you're nerdy kind of like I am, feel free to watch. I want to start by just sharing all the books that I read in 2018. I started the year off with We All Fall Down by Natalie D. Richards, and read Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell, The Deal by Elle Kennedy, Simon vs. the Homo Sapien Agenda by Becky Alberti, Alex Approximately by Jen Bennett, Rebel Belle by Rachel Hawkins, The Duff by Cody Keplinger, Emmy and Oliver by Robin Benway. I read Sorority by Genevieve Sly Crane. I read Now a Major Motion Picture by Corey McCarthy, With Malice by Eileen Cook. I read Maybe in Another Life by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I read The Mistake by Elle Kennedy. I reread To All the Boys I Loved Before by Jenny Han. I read The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. I read One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus. I read You by Caroline Kepnes. I reread Dash and Lily's Book of Dares by Rachel Cohn and David Levitin. I read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I read Losing Hope by Colleen Hoover. And I read The 12 Days of Dash and Lily by Rachel Cohn and David Levitin. The first stats I really wanted to share with you guys are the Goodreads stats, which I don't remember off the top of my head, so we're going to do our best. But the first thing that I know is always up there is that I read 21 books across, and I'll put the number over here, but it's like 7,000 something pages. And then the shortest book I read this year was The 12 Days of Dash and Lily, and the longest book I read this year was Fangirl. Fangirl was also the most popular book I read this year, with the least popular book I read this year being We All Fall Down by Natalie D. Richards. The highest rated book that I read on Goodreads this year was Losing Hope by Colleen Hoover. And then for me, I did my best and worst books of 2018. I ranked all my books and all that stuff YouTubers do, you know. And I also wanted to include my most surprising and my biggest disappointment in this video. They both were featured in other videos, but that's okay. But the most surprising book for me this year was The Duff by Cody Keplinger. I really expected to kind of hate this book. I talked about it a little bit in my book Best Books of the Year when I was talking about it, but I really expected to not like this book and have a lot of issues with the slut shaming and the fat shaming, and I just didn't. I really think this was probably the funniest book I read this year. I read it so quickly and I just thoroughly enjoyed it. My most disappointing book of the year, I do want to say, I know for a lot of people your most disappointing book is the book that ranks really low or something like that. This book did get 4 stars, which is kind of surprising in and of itself, but I was really disappointed because I thought that it would be in like my top 3, and it was in my top 10, but it wasn't as good as I thought it would be, and that was You by Caroline Kepnes. I went into this book with such high expectations and I didn't love it as much as I wanted to, so it became my most disappointing book of the year. Alright, so with all of the specifics of books out, I did want to share the stats that I tracked this year. So I tracked a few different categories. I'm going to try to make some like pie charts to put up here and just share them with you. So the first thing that I did track this year was my finishing months. So my highest months were always 3-book months, and that happened in February, in July, and in December, which to me are really kind of surprising. February is the shortest month of the year. July is in the middle of summer, which is normally when I hit a rut. And December is normally the busiest month of the year, but that's actually when I got my most reading done. On average, it looks like I read about 1 book a month. The month that I had the hardest time reading in was September, where I only read 0 books, which to me wasn't super surprising. It was also the beginning of the school year, and I work in a school system, so it normally is kind of crazy. I then looked at how I rated books. I did track all of my books this year, but I will say that when it came to rereads, I do not rank rereads. I don't re-rank them. I am a big fan of just keeping them where they started at originally. So this is how my stars kind of fell out. I did give a lot of books 2 stars this year, which is kind of interesting because I did really look at 2018 as a good reading year, so it's kind of surprising that I did give a lot of 2 stars. But I'm not surprised by the fact that the next highest number is 4 stars. I normally do kind of fall between that 4-star and 2-star area. It takes a lot for a book to be 1 star in my mind, and it takes a lot for it to rank as 5 stars for me. When it came to the gender of the author, I looked at females, males, both, and unknown. I apparently really only read females though this year, which I'm kind of embarrassed about. I read 2 books that had both a female and male author attached to them, but they were 2 books in a duology, so they had the same authors. So I guess I shouldn't be all that surprised by the fact that there's 2, I guess. I don't know. But I didn't read any male authors this year, and that was really not on purpose. It's not like I'm looking to not read male authors. It's just a lot of synopsises that I'm drawn to are often female written. The next thing I looked at was the target age group for all of my books, and I looked at it as new adult, which is that steamy type stuff. I looked at young adult, and then I looked at standard adult. So young adult came up super high in my rankings. I read 12 young adult books this year. That does not surprise me. That is still a genre that I'm very drawn to. I'm actually loving that I've kind of gotten into booktube because I'm now seeing that I'm not alone in that feeling of just really liking the young adult. I did explore new adult this year, so I am not surprised that that came out a little higher than standard adult. And then I enjoyed my standard adult as well. If you're wondering of like what I was qualifying as standard adult, I said you, like Evelyn Hugo I think I had as Maybe in Another Life. Books that just aren't as steamy. And then when it came to years published, I looked at 3 different factors. I looked at books that were published in 2018, books that were published last year in 2017, and books that were published before 2017. I am not surprised that the majority of books that I read are from pre-2017. A lot of stuff that was on my TBR that I was collecting over the last few years have been from older booktube videos, so I'm not super surprised that a lot of stuff I read was pre-2017. I'm actually though surprised by how many books I did read from 2017. I would have thought that would be the highest area, or there'd be a bigger difference between 2017 and 2018. When it came to authors, I did look at authors that were new to me as well as authors I had read before. So I read 14 new to me authors and 7 I had read before. That to me was kind of surprising and kind of not surprising. I thought it would be a little bit closer. I didn't think like 50-50, but I think I was probably thinking like, I don't know, maybe 9 to 12, something like that, because I doubled the amount of new to me authors, which was really cool. I did find some awesome new authors that I love. I love Elle Kennedy, I love Taylor Jenkins Reid, so I'm really glad. When it came to genres, I looked into a lot of different genres and subgenres. I looked at if I read YA, contemporary, LGBT, thriller, sci-fi, nonfiction, fantasy, historical fiction, mystery, and romance. I did allow books to overlap. So basically if they qualified into any of these genres, I put them into these genres. So I read a lot of contemporary books, but that's because contemporary could be a YA book, it could be an adult book, it could even be a new adult book. So I read a lot of contemporary that really is this like overarching kind of range. My next biggest one though was romance. Again, romance falls into so many of the other books that I've read. Almost every book had some sort of romantic element to it. The book I read the least were fantasy and historical fiction, which the fantasy definitely didn't surprise me. Historical fiction was something new that I read and I'm very excited to read a little bit more of because I did enjoy it. Alright, as usual, I got kicked out of my card because I filmed too many videos in one sitting. But I just want to share the last 2 things that I tracked. I don't really know where I got cut off, so I'm just gonna hop in wherever. But like I was saying, I did track the number of pages. I started as low as less than 100 pages and went to 400 plus pages. But I really learned this year that I don't read books lower than like 200 pages. Even like 250 is kind of low for me. That I primarily kind of stick around the 300 to 400 page mark, which wasn't super surprising as much as like it was kind of interesting to kind of see it play out like that. And then I did read a few books that were over 400 pages, which never to me seems that hard. I do avoid those really thick books though that are like 500, 600, 700 pages because I think sometimes I get overwhelmed by them. I do eventually maybe want to read some. I just haven't found one that I'm like, yep, I'm willing to read that many pages for. And then the final thing I looked at was like the ranking or the type of novel. So I looked at what was first in the series, what was a middle of the series, sequel kind of thing, what was a series finale, and then a standalone. So I read a lot of standalones this year, a little bit more than I thought I would read standalones. I did start a good amount of series this year, and then I only read one sequel this year, which was from the Off-Campus series. I do want to read a couple more sequels, I think, especially if I started 7 series this year. I probably should try to read more sequels. And I read 2 series finales for series. The first one was Hopeless by Colleen Hoover, and the second one was The 12 Days of Dash and Lily. So that was kind of interesting. But yeah, that is all of the bookish stats that I kept this year and tried to figure out and all of that. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will definitely be around in the future with more videos. If you want to keep up to date with me on a more up-to-date basis, you can always follow any of my social medias. They are all linked down below, and they all use the same username, which is at Judy_Judy94, and a few samples just came up here on the side. I hope that you guys have a fantastic 2019 reading year. I have my 2019 reading goals coming up very soon, and I will see y'all in my next video. Bye, Worlders.
Beautiful. I've never seen you before. Do you live around here? What's your name? Beautiful. The way you looked at me, girl, it took my breath away, and I had